And so we'll call the meeting to order. And Jeremy, I assume you have just confirmed a quorum. Is that correct?
I have, sir, and the press has been notified.
Okay. All right. And so we also welcome aboard today Sarah Gibson. Is that right, Sarah?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Sarah, welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So the next item of business is consideration and approval of the minutes of the meeting held May 27th, 2021. Has everyone had a chance to look those minutes over? Mm-hmm. Are there any questions or changes? Okay. If not, I'd entertain a motion that we approve those minutes.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
You have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So before we go any further.
Yes, yeah, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, before we go further with the agenda, if you don't mind, I'd like to mention to the board the changes in staffing, promotions that have occurred since the last meeting of the board. These were announced in early June via email and via e-gram, but they are significant, and we're very proud to have these promotions and these changes of staffing with us. And the reason I'm mentioning it now rather than at the end of the meeting is because they do impact some of the agenda items that we'll be taking up as the meeting goes on with changing in signature authority and other changes that need to be made to accompany these promotions. The first promotion that I'll mention is the promotion of John Davidson, who's been transitioned to the position of Deputy Executive Director for Business Services. And John, as you may recall, is replacing Amy Smith, who retired effective July 30th. And we're very happy to have John in his new position. He comes to us from internally within the corporation, and it's a great promotion for us, and we're tickled to death to have him in that position. The next transition is that of Tracy Thurston, and you've been hearing from Tracy for several years now in her capacity as the Director of Multifamily Programs, and she's actually going to be continuing in that capacity today for the purposes of describing the various multifamily projects that we have on the agenda. But Tracy has been promoted and has assumed the position of Senior Director of Financial Management. And this is a position that's not been filled in a long time, but it's the number 2 position in the finance area, reporting to Jim Statler. And we had concluded, and along with Jim, that we really needed some additional help in that area, and that we wanted to have other people cross-trained in order to do the very same great work that Jim's been doing for us for many, many years. So we welcome Tracy to that new position, and she'll be transitioning out of making these presentations to the board, that is with reference to the multifamily projects at our next meeting. And filling in for her in that position will be Sam Thorner, who comes to us from our legal department, but is being moved in as Director of the Multifamily Programs. And we welcome Sam to that position as well. So if you will excuse that interruption, I think that'll make the rest of the agenda a little bit more understandable.
That's great, Winston. Thank you for doing that. That's very important. And we want to congratulate all those folks for their promotion and wish them well. And while we're talking about that, also, I just want to mention to the board, a few weeks back, Carlisle, Kentucky experienced a terrible, terrible tragedy. I don't know if any of y'all have been there, but if you look at and see the photos of Middle Tennessee, Carlisle looks a whole lot the same way, although the loss of life in Carlisle wasn't as great as Middle Tennessee. But they had about 6 inches of rain in about 2 hours. And they had a flash flood, which destroyed many homes and many businesses. And I just want to say that KHC Kentucky Housing Corporation, went up to the school there and worked with people trying to help them, get through this disaster. And I know that Molly Tate was there on a Friday and talked to many people. And I just want to say that Winston took his Saturday off and went up there and worked. And I just want to give a shout out to those folks and to KHC. Carlisle's close to us here. We're about 20 minutes away. We had made several trips over there. And I just want to say I appreciate KHC going up there and trying to help. And I especially appreciate Winston and Molly for taking their time to go over there. So with that, Winston, you have anything you want to add to that?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate your kind words. There's very little that sometimes we feel like we can do in these types of situations, but we were able to help out in a few limited situations, and we're happy to have done that. I do have some informational items that I'll cover at the end, but I think with that being said, you can, as far as I'm concerned, we can proceed with the agenda as written, and I'll jump in at the end and present a couple of things that aren't on the agenda.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Winston. Okay. So, Tracy, congratulations on your appointment. And if you want to start with number 3, the inducement resolution for crossings at South Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the board. I have a handful of bond resolutions for you this afternoon. The first being the inducement resolution for crossing at South Park Apartments. The crossing at South Park Apartments project involves requesting bonding authority in an amount not to exceed $22 million. The project involves the acquisition and new construction of 192 units in Louisville, Kentucky. The project will serve 192 households at or below 60% AMI. The 192 units consist of 24 one-bedroom units, 72 two-bedroom units, and 96 three-bedroom units. The development team is listed there on the screen. As the financing progresses with this project, this will be brought back to the board of directors to authorize the issuance and sale of taxes and bonds through a separate resolution. So this is just the inducement resolution for this project. Staff recommends approval of the inducement resolution for crossing at South Park Apartments.
Do any members of the board have any questions of Tracy on this project? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve.
I'll move this, Holly.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay. So Tracy, you want to do Oakdale Apartments?
Yes, sir. The Oakdale Apartments project is requesting bonding authority in an amount not to exceed $15,930,000. The project involves the acquisition and new construction of 144 units located in Lexington. The project will serve 29 households at or below 40% AMI, 86 households at or below 60% AMI, and 29 households at or below 80% AMI. There's 24 one-bedroom units, 62 bedroom units, and 63 bedroom units. The development team is listed on the screen there. And like the prior resolution, as this progresses, it will be brought back to the board of directors to authorize the issuance and sale of tax and bonds through a separate resolution, and staff recommends approval.
This is Kathy. I just want to say I've been thrilled to see these 2 and 3 bedroom units coming into play. So,
okay, thank you, Kathy. Any other members have any comments or questions of Tracy on this project? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve this.
PG.
Okay, I got a motion. Do I have a second?
This is Jerry, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay, Tracy, you want to talk about Mount Lebanon.
The Mount Lebanon Senior Apartment Project is requesting bonding and authority in amount not to exceed $6,500,000. This elderly project involves the acquisition and renovation of 70 units on Magazine Street in Louisville. The project will serve 70 households at or below 60% AMI, and they're all one-bedroom units as it's a senior residence. The development team members are listed on your screen, and as financing progresses for this project, it will be brought back for the authorization of the issuance and sale of the tax-exempt bonds through a separate resolution, and staff recommends approval.
Okay, any board members have any comments or questions regarding this project? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Phil Moffitt with the motion.
Okay, thank you. And do I have a second?
Second, PG.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Tracy.
Thank you.
Perkins.
The Carl D. Perkins Apartments project is requesting bonding and authority in amount not to exceed $10 million. The project involves the acquisition and rehab of 150 units in Pikeville. The project will serve 150 households at or below 60% AMI, and the apartments are all one-bedroom units. The development team members are listed on the screen. Much like the others, this is an inducement resolution, so this will be brought back to the board of directors for the to authorize the issuance and sale of tax-exempt bonds with a separate resolution, and staff recommends approval.
Okay. Any members have any questions or comments regarding this project?
No, sir.
Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve.
So moved.
Okay, have a motion and a second. We have a second?
Second, Barry.
All right, thank you, Barry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, so Tracy, Lone Oak Meadows.
All right, this is a final resolution for Lone Oak Meadows. The Lone Oak Meadows project was granted an inducement resolution on November 19th, 2019 for bonding authority amount not to exceed $40 million. This final resolution is for the same amount of bonding authority. This project involves the new construction of 312 units serving families in Louisville. There are 6 units serving families at or below 30% AMI, 15 units at or below 50% AMI, and 291 units at or below 60% AMI. The project consists of 36 one-bedroom units, 168 two-bedroom units, and 108 three-bedroom units. The project is located in Louisville, Kentucky. The development team is listed on the board. This is for authorization for the issuance and sale of tax-exempt bonds. And staff recommends approval of this final resolution for Lone Oak Meadows.
Tracy, where is Blue Lick Road?
You're going to ask the non-Louisville person on the call here. It is down in a South Park region. I believe it's below the Gene Snyder Freeway, south of Gene Snyder.
Okay. Kathy, do you have a question?
No, Jeremy, am I recusing or abstaining? I have been involved in zoning and had some zoning ordinances approved in our land development code. LDG is developing under one of these zoning laws that I helped get passed. And so I've been explaining the zoning. We felt it prudent that although I'm not employed, I'm not taking money from them, I have no connection with LGG other than to be encouraging of this really progressive zoning use, that I just not be voting on this. I don't know if I'm supposed to abstain or recuse.
I think either one will get you where you want to go.
Okay, well, I just wanted to explain, I don't have any real entanglement, but we're trying to be very prudent.
Sarah, just make sure that that's noted in the minutes when you prepare those.
We appreciate that, Kathy. So do any other members of the board have any questions or comments they want to make? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this project.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Mr. Jerry, I'll second.
Okay, we have motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. And one recused. Okay. All right, Kathy recused. Okay. All right, Tracy, I think you've got one more.
Yeah, it's just the final resolution for Christian Towers. Christian Towers project received an inducement resolution from KHC's Board of Directors on May 28, 2020, in the amount of $19,800,000. The project was originally induced consisting of 92 rehabilitation units and 50 new units. However, because of unanticipated costs, the development team has adjusted the scope of the project and reduced the total number of new units to 40, a reduction of 10 units. So this is in front of you today with a new unit total of 132. The project is located on Versailles Road in Lexington and will serve 132 elderly households at or below 60% AMI, and they're all one-bedroom units, both the rehabilitated units and the new units. The development team is listed on the screen there. And this is for the issuance of bonds for Christian Towers, the final resolution, and staff recommends approval.
Okay, any members have any comments or questions of Tracy on this project? Not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. To have a second?
Phil Moffitt with the second.
Okay, thank you, Phil. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion. Okay, Sarah or Tracy, thank you so very much.
Thank you all.
Looks like you've been busy, so we appreciate your hard work. All right, so Wendy Smith, presentation of Kentucky Housing Corporation allocation plan.
Yes, thank you, Chair Denham, and good afternoon, board members. I'm actually presenting you all the FY21 actuals. You know, now that we are into August, we have closed out the previous fiscal year and finally kind of gotten all of our dollar amount and household or unit count numbers for fiscal year 2021. And what we do every year is come to you all and kind of share in the blue columns that you see to your right, how the actual numbers compare to what we projected. Now, please keep in mind that the allocation plan is always this sort of like, here's what we think we're going to do. And sometimes we don't even know what our allocations are from HUD yet. And sometimes we get COVID relief money and we are really guessing when we give you all numbers. So with that in mind, I'm going to just share with you all some of the highlights. I'm going to focus, we have 3 pages in this. I'm going to focus just on this first one, which is a roll up of all of our numbers. But you do have 2 other schedules that give you more detail. And I'm happy to talk about any of the 3, but I think this is the most kind of useful one when we're just doing kind of a check-in on how did things turn out at the end of the fiscal year in fiscal year 21. So again, focusing on those blue columns where we report our actuals compared to what we projected. And I will say my point of view isn't that I'm worried about coming in exactly. I'm more interested in myself knowing and talking with staff and sharing with you all, well, if it was very different, then why? And are we concerned about it? Or is it just something that, you know, it's just a matter of course of how things went that year? So starting with our single family lending programs, this is all of the programs we do to lend to low and moderate income home buyers, often first-time home buyers, and sometimes to help existing homeowners keep their homes. And so in this area, we performed quite well in the last fiscal year. So if you look at the actual number of households served, We came in at over 400 more home buyers served than expected with our mortgages. And likewise, we were pretty close on our mortgage credit certificate program in terms of how much we projected. And for our down payment assistance, we eclipsed our goal by just a few home buyers in terms of those that we assisted with down payment assistance. One area where we came in well under what we expected was the hardest hit unemployment bridge program. You all, that is from the last recession, from the 2008 recession. Those are dollars from Treasury that we kept being told it's going to end, and then it would get extended and kind of shifted. And it has finally concluded just in time for the next gigantic package of COVID relief money to come to KHC, including a program that will be very much like hardest hit. So we'll have a new row in there soon enough, but we did serve far fewer existing homeowners with that than we expected, only because it has sunset. And then lastly, our homeowner counseling program that we do in partnership with counseling agencies all across the state has served far more households than we had originally projected. And part of that has to do with the dollar amount that we were able to grant out to them. That was far more than originally projected. So that reaps a lot of benefits in terms of getting folks ready to buy a home or helping them to keep their home. The next big category is that homeownership production. And we came in pretty close to target on that. We estimated around 166 new homes built or homes repaired for existing owners. And that came in at 162. These are lower than typical and lower than what we project for 22, in large part because of the pandemic. It is hard to go out and repair an existing owner's home when there is a pandemic going on and everyone's trying to distance. In addition, some construction crews were having a hard time getting together and working in the same place at the same time. Materials costs also went up for all of our categories. The next big category of investment is our multifamily programs. This is where we either fund and finance the construction of new rental homes or the rehab and renovation and resyndication of large multifamily properties, or even small ones in some parts of the state. And this came in way above projection. We had projected around 1,900 units rehabbed or newly built, and we came in at almost 2,600. So that's only great news as the Commonwealth needs lots of affordable housing. The next category is rental assistance programs, and this really represents two kinds of HUD Section 8 rent assistance: voucher-based, where the tenant can take that voucher anywhere in 87 counties to rent a unit, and project-based, where the assistance is tied to a physical property, and that can't be ported anywhere; it stays in the unit. And we projected serving around 27,000 families or households with that, and we were at 28,000. And I can tell you this is in large part the result of our Section 8 voucher program. Up fast, really get higher utilization. That team is just cranking. They're doing a great job. So that's 28,000 households served. The next big category is the one where we didn't hit our target. This is our homelessness and special needs programs. And so we had aimed at 30,000 households assisted and came in at a little under 4,000. This is in large part due to the fact that we were trying to estimate with some of our special one-time money from HUD and other programs how we were going to help people with short-term rent assistance during the pandemic. However, when there is an eviction moratorium, many of the HUD programs that could be used for that short-term one-time assistance cannot be used. So we really did not meet our goal, but it's not something I'm especially worried about. Similarly, in terms of helping folks who are living with AIDS, we came in under our goal, and that is largely the result of us doing a longer amount of assistance to fewer households. So again, I'm not super concerned about that, but it did come in well below. We also have seen some of our partners struggle to ramp up their ability to use the added money that has come from the CARES Act for their programs. Our next category is weatherization. This is where we do energy efficiency and weatherization improvements for existing homeowners who are low income to bring down their energy bill. It's a great way to buy them more affordable, more housing affordability. And we came in close to target, 916 households versus us projecting to help about 1,050. And then lastly, some categories where we didn't have a projection because we didn't know we were getting the dollars. And this would be our temporary COVID-19 funding, our emergency solutions grant dollars, and our Healthy at Home eviction relief funding that came through legislation that passed December 27th. Those together have served about 13,000 households. I'm going to talk more in detail about Healthy at Home eviction relief later in the meeting, so I won't trouble you all with a whole lot of details, but it's a significant amount of assistance. I can tell you that the ESG dollars will end up carrying over. We have allocated $23 million to our partners, but they still have another year plus to use those funds. And so those dollars are still operating in Kentucky. I will pause there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
Wendy, let me ask. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Wendy, this Barry, I have a question. You mentioned that we're having difficulty with our partners ramping up on the CARES Act and other things. What's the lesson learned we've had on ramping up, or is there any way we can assist them in ramping up?
Oh, such a good question, Barry. So
I get one a year.
We're probably still processing on what the lessons learned are, but I would say that part of what we're looking at to address this issue is offering some training and technical assistance with some of our dollars. In addition, looking at some of the American Rescue Plan Act funds to keep the activities that are funded under CARES going even for a few years after the CARES money ends, so that our partners could see this not as this one-time blip where they are skittish about adding staff or committing to it long-term. If we could say, look, you'll have sufficient funding to do this through September 2025, that might be a commitment that makes them really add the staff they probably already should have, or add hours, increase their geography, that kind of stuff. So I can't answer you with great astuteness about the lessons learned, but it's a reality that our partners are having a hard time digesting this extra money, particularly if it feels like it's only going to last a year or two and then go poof.
Excellent question, Barry. Any other members have any questions of Wendy?
I do. It's Kathy. So we have 125 million that we are that comes under other temporary funding in the 2022 allocation plan. Was any of that part of the money that didn't get spent in 2021?
Where are you looking, Kathy? Help me make sure I'm looking at the same spot you are.
I'm looking at FY 2022 allocation plan from all sources, and I see eviction relief, CRR, SSA-ERA, 125 million.
Sure.
And is that some of this rollover, or is that the additional money? And so how much money are we talking about? Because the feds are all talking about how the people at the state level haven't spent the money, even though people are about to be massively evicted.
Oh, I'm well aware of the heat that the program is taking.
I do want to say one really positive thing, because I think it gets lost in this. You've really dug out the Section 8 program, and it's performing super well, both the multifamily and the voucher program. And you deserve a lot of credit for that. But now I'm on this.
Yeah, right. So keep in mind, I was talking about FY21 actuals, of course, and you're now looking at the projected how much we think in FY22. So that 125 million is what we project of the ERA1 from Treasury, which we are operating as Healthy at Home, that we will get out in FY22. And if you don't mind waiting, I'm going to give you all kind of a bunch of numbers about Healthy at Home eviction relief, or ERA1, later in the meeting, Kathy.
Okay.
So Wendy, let me ask this. You think that we're going to assist 24,510 folks in 2022 with eviction relief? What is the legal status of that situation right now? Is there a moratorium still when it advanced or extended, and you cannot evict right now? Is that correct?
In certain geographies and for certain eligible tenants, yes, and only for non-payment of rent. Like, so if someone just has an expired lease or they have somehow breached their lease, they can still be evicted, and evictions are still happening in Kentucky.
Okay, so it doesn't apply to everyone, and that's that. And I'd heard that there had been an eviction somewhere around here, and I did not see how that could happen under the moratorium. But okay, all right. So now, Wendy, how many people are you employing to get this money out?
Mike, I would have. So I can tell you that we have onboarded. Now we've had a lot of turnover, so I'd have to pull up a spreadsheet to get our exact count of temps. But we have brought on, I mean, we've onboarded over 85, but we've had turnover and churn with those temps. So I'll be honest, I would need to pull up a spreadsheet to make sure I had the exact count for you, but a whole lot. Knowing that it was going to be a big push for the first, 6 to 12 months of folks who, need assistance, and then it might level out at some point.
So it's safe to say you, in a short period of time, you've had to put on a lot more folks to
oh my goodness, yes.
Well, I think you all deserve a tremendous amount of credit, both you and the management team of putting this together. I mean, I've seen some of this in the newspaper, and this is a tremendous undertaking that you all have done, and I want to compliment you for it, and I also want to say that thank you for helping on the homeless situation up here, which is we don't have a homeless situation anywhere near like a Louisville does or Northern Kentucky does, but one or two up here get a lot of attention, and I know you've helped a whole lot, so I appreciate that.
Well,
so any other members?
Well, I've been looking at the homeless and not about the federal money. I mean, the emergency money, but the new money. And so you've permanently scaled back how many people who are homeless you're going to assist through the state, because it looks like that number is low for projected 2022 as well. And that is just reality. I'm only...
No, I don't even know exactly why. I would like to look into that a little more, Kathy. That 30,000, I'm wondering where the heck did he come up with that number?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I would love to look into that 30,000 and get back to you, because I'm not sure. That's a really ambitious number, and I'm a little suspicious of it. And I'll be honest, I didn't realize how out of whack that number appears until I started getting ready for today's meeting this morning. Okay. So I would like to get back to you on that, because I think there might be something else going on with why it looks so imbalanced.
Okay.
Well, still, the number of people that you're helping just from the rent subsidy, I mean, there's 27,000 people. I mean, that is remarkable. I mean, that you have been able to help that many folks. So that's a tremendous task.
I think it's such an important program. That ongoing rent assistance is like the ticket from being chaotically poor to being stably poor. It just makes such a difference.
I may I say, having administered the program for Louisville, that you keeping at your maximum but not over is a tough job. You can't really say, oh, today I want to do 50,000 when you only have. So I appreciate what the finesse it takes to keep in budget and yet spend as much as you can.
Thanks, Kathy. It is tricky.
So, Jeremy, I think we need a motion to accept our report. Is that correct?
This is an informational item only. It requires no action.
Okay. Well, Wendy, please express our appreciation to everyone that helps you. And thank you so much for all the work you do.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right. So, Jim, if you would, we move on to the presentation of Kentucky Housing Corporation financial update. And Madam Secretary, I've got an issue here at the bank that I need to take care of. Would you take over for a few minutes? I'll be back as soon as I can. Is Holly still with us?
I'm here. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Could you take over for a few minutes for me?
We
okay.
are.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry. So we are now on our next agenda item, which I guess is the presentation of our financial update with Mr. Statler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. Up first is a statement that we've been presenting for a long time, the statement of financial position for the business type activities. And it's comparing essentially the balance sheet at the end of June of 21 to the balance sheet at the end of June of 20 with percentage changes. And if you look at just using the alpha aids on the right margin, line A, which is our total assets, you'll see that total assets have shrunk about $55 million. That is due to a couple of things. One is the overall assets we're carrying in the bond indenture are continuing to decrease by plan. And then also there's a new government accounting pronouncement that came out, and we've had to offload out of our assets about $60 million of cash and investment securities that are essentially escrow accounts and replacement reserve accounts on our multifamily houses. And those assets and the corresponding contra liability are going to be on two separate statements that will appear in our audited financial statements, but they having come out of the statement that we present here, that also accounts for the drop in the total assets. Now, if you look at the drop in total liabilities, it's much larger, which is a good thing, because if the drop in liabilities is larger than the drop in assets, the only balance that goes up is fund balance or retained earnings. So you can see that in row B, there was a drop of about $100 million in total liabilities. If you look at C right above it, that's where the other side of the escrow accounts is, the credit side, if you will. You can see there's a huge drop there, but again, those are just simply offloading those liabilities and the related assets into a separate statement. Continuing to line D, which is our net position or our retained earnings, if you will, it jumped from $363 million to $408 million. That comes from net earnings, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Again, the shrinking balance sheet, like we've talked about in the past, is not necessarily cause for alarm because we have such a huge earning asset off balance sheet, if you will, and that's the total loan service for others. A little disappointing this year. The total loan service for others dropped from 2.4 million to 2.3 million. We have been hit with massive amounts of payoffs that we have not been able to recoup with new loan origination. So we do have a small shrinkage there. We were able to pick up the average yield on that servicing portfolio from 32.7 bips to 33.1. So it's been not as big a diminution in our future earnings power as it might at first appear. But again, not totally unexpected, but somewhat disappointing that it's actually happened. And graphically, we can see that on the next page. This is the black and red report, as we call it. But you can see that it is continuing to convex at the top, which means that the overall earning assets, combination of the assets that are in the HRB plus the service for others, has been decreasing just ever so slightly. And there's, we've touched a little bit about it. We are having a lot of loans pay off via refinancing, and we are first-time homebuyer lenders. And so we don't get to refi the loans that are leaving us. We leave that to the private sector. If a borrower that has gotten into the homeownership role is able to refinance because they've been a successful homeowner, they will refinance in the private sector. And so it remains a challenge for us to continue to find first-time home buyers. I suspect, and I don't have any hard numbers to confirm this, but that there is not as much first-time homebuyer housing stock available relative to the level of activity of refinances. And I think one of the big home builders reported record earnings, but it was all driven by luxury homes, the high-end construction. And if that's where all the construction activity is going, then there's on the single-family side, at least, we're doing a pretty good job on the multifamily side here ourselves, but on the single-family side, that it is possible that there's just not as much first-time homebuyer stock that's out there. We're working on it, and it's not time for any great concern financially, but we certainly don't want potential first-time homebuyers shut out of the home buying activity simply because there's not enough housing stock.
Yeah, this is Kathy. Have we tracked the addresses of people who have gotten refinanced to make sure they're getting refinanced in responsible loans and are successful, which would then inform us about doing other parts of our work at KHC? Has anybody ever done that to see?
We have not. Kathy, we have not, and it is something that we may explore. To be perfectly honest, we're pedaling as fast as we can just to accomplish the new loans coming in and the loans coming off. And that's not an excuse, but it is an explanation that we have not tracked where the payoffs are coming from. I will say that we have a disproportionate amount of payoffs in our Fannie Mae portfolio than our Ginnie portfolio. The Fannie portfolio is a little bit, and I don't mean that it's a higher quality borrower, if you will. That doesn't sound right, but it's somebody that was more financially able to finance a larger home, and these are the homes that we do know are paying off simply because we know the Fannie portfolio is running out faster than the Ginnie Mae portfolio, which is government lending, FHA.
I just also worry about racial impact of. I think there are still predatory lending, and when we see. Anyway, it would be a good thing for us to know that people are safely leaving, because otherwise that informs us about some other program we might need to institute.
Point taken. Any other comments on the balance sheet or the red and black chart? Okay, moving on to the income statement. Moving a little too fast there. Again, using the navigation aids on the right, the net interest margin dropped by $4.3 million year over year. That's a pretty hefty drop. The history of the net interest margin was early on, 8-9 years ago, when the HRB was not particularly well managed from a net interest margin standpoint. We were able to suck a lot of extra interest margin out of the HRB over the last several years, despite the fact that the underlying assets were shrinking. Those efficiencies are pretty much no longer available to us. We continue to shrink, which is fine. And the other phenomenon that's happening on net interest margin is a lot of our longer term investments that we made 5 or 6, 7 years ago are maturing. And as you're well aware, there's not much yield out there throughout the yield curve. And so what we're getting on the reinvestment of those funds is comparatively small relative to prior years. And it did accelerate in fiscal 21, but it's much market conditions as anything else. The line B, which is the main driver for our bottom line this year, secondary loan sales of secondary loans in the secondary market. We've talked about this in prior meetings. That number jumped from 25 million to just over 35 million. As I've said, we sold loans this year for prices I don't understand how anybody's paying it, but we graciously and happily sold to those people. It has trailed off quite a bit in the last several months. I do not expect $36 million or 35.5 to be that number next year. There's a couple of things that also drove this number this year is we sold for cash this year and not servicing fee because of the pension cessation. We needed cash to get out of the pension fund, and so we skewed our performance or our actual sales activity to those that will generate the most cash, but maybe short the servicing fee just a little bit. And so net, we were able to increase the servicing fee, but we did sell a lot of, we sold servicing basically in the initial sale of the loans, but really an increase of $10.5 million year over year on a slightly decreased notional amount of loans that we sold is really quite a phenomenon, quite a welcome performance. Fees, no great changes there. The other income items, not so much. Going down to G&A expense line, I don't have any navigation aid on there, but the general and administrative expenses, they actually dropped from fiscal 20 to 22 or to 21. We're going to see another schedule in just a minute that says, how could they possibly have dropped when we were so over budget on expenses? What we were able to do was we were able to take existing expenses plus all the increase in expenses and qualify those and attribute those and allocate those to the stimulus money that we were getting in. And we were able to get the stimulus money to pay for some expenses that in years past, there wasn't enough admin out there to pay for some of the overhead and indirect expenses we were incurring. And so that's a welcome number. And I can discuss it just a little bit more as we get to a couple pages out. Provision for losses on loans, a nice drop from $1.3 million to just under $300,000. Most of that is because our down payment assistance portfolio dropped. And when it dropped, then the reserve that's on those loans drops with it. And that almost all of that drop is because the down payment assistance portfolio has shrunk. It's shrunk because loans paid off faster than we were able to replenish with additional or new DAP loans. And we were able to put out a little bit more money on housing assistance grants. And that's a function of the housing assistance fund that we have. Wendy touched on it just briefly in her presentation on the allocation plan. And as the company generates more profits in the future that are not dedicated to paying off the pension unfunded liability, then that's liquidity and assets capital that'll be available for more missional types instead of expenditures or activities instead of catching up on paying operating expenses like the pension over the years past. Looking down at line C, that's the change in net position that you will see on our audited financials. That is on the way we have to report. We like to look at how we perform without one major component of that, and that's the gains or sales, increase or decrease in the fair value of our securities. We can't do anything about the value of our securities going up or down. And so we get big swings in our bottom line because of something that we're not doing or taking care, causing. And so this last line D is it takes all that activity out. And overall, the management of the company outperformed the prior year by just over $10 million. And looking up the line, that's almost all coming off of line B, which is the gains on sale of loans. So the story is consistent and it makes sense. And we've just had a dynamite year. So that is helping us. We've set the table for future profits by changing the pension plan. And we're going to be able to pay for most of the cessation costs with existing capital. And so I think it's been a great charge. And we're all a little tired, but we're going to come back to work tomorrow morning full of vim and vigor to resume the chase. So anyway, if we go to the next chart, this is a 20-year history of that bottom line, that line D that's on that previous schedule, the income or expense that management has more control over and disregards the changes in value of more investment securities. And you can see that 10 years ago things were just a little bit rocky, but then we've been able to really pull it out and change a few things. One of those is the servicing folks are servicing loans the way you're supposed to. The HRBs being managed from a net interest margin and a little bit more financially, I don't want to say responsibly, but with financial results being the primary objective, if you will. The programs are running much more efficiently, and the production of single-family loans we've maintained very good production numbers. And the difference between the overall height of these charts stacks is, if you look at 2021, it's $45 million. That's the bottom line on the schedule before after the increase in or change in market value of the securities was. The components. Yes, ma'am.
The dark green versus the light green.
Right. The dark green is operations, The light green is gains on sale of our loans. And so you can see how much of our overall bottom line is a function of the gains on the sale of the loans. But the market gives us the gains on the sales, and we manage to the dark green line, which is overall operations, and overall operations has been on a steady uphill climb as well. So this is a 20-year success story for Kentucky Housing Corporation, and there's no guarantees that the next line is going to be above the 45 million, but it does show that it's been a pretty good ride the last 4 or 5 years. Going to the next schedule, and the line A, which is the decrease in cash and cash equivalents. Again, that's because we have offloaded from the financials, the escrow accounts. I think it bears mentioning, though, on the very bottom of the chart, the last 2 lines, which are proceeds from issuances of debt or draws on lines of credit, and then principal payments back, that even though we produced almost as much production this year as we did last year, we didn't have to borrow hardly anything to do it. And the reason for that is the cash build from the cash profitability of our overall operations and just good cash management, all in anticipation of exiting the pension plan. So again, the story is consistent that we've been stockpiling cash. We haven't needed it for warehousing loans, and then it shows up pretty clearly in those last 2 lines. And so if you look at the 3 lines above, you can see that those numbers are fairly consistent to last year. We spent this much making loans, and we converted this much to MBSs. That's because we produced almost as many loans this year as we did last year, and those numbers should be consistent, which they are. Moving on to the budget versus actual, there's a lot of stuff going on here. We had budgeted last year $1,966,000 surplus in the budget accounting, and we ended up the year with $5.7 million. So we were $3.7 million favorable to budget. There's 100 moving pieces here. Just going quickly down the line. Line A, which is Section 8 rental assistance, we got more money this year, and we deployed it, and so we showed a nice increase over what we thought we were going to get for the year there. In home, we undershot our admin. A lot of the work that was being done for home was redeployed to work on stimulus programs. And so we underperformed there because we didn't incur all the expenses necessarily to earn all of the admin that was available for home or that we thought we'd get. But then looking at line C, you can see that on the homeless side, we busted it there, $3.8 million. That line also includes Treasury, although it says Department of HUD homeless, that also includes Treasury dollars, HHERF activity, which is a Treasury program. Actually, it's piggybacking into a state program that passed through from Treasury. But anyway, that's the admin dollars that program is throwing. And you'll see on the expense side that there was huge increases in a number of expenses that gobbled all that money up. But overall, I got to tip my hat to Wendy. She's done a dynamite job, and she's sitting there smiling, and she's always smiling and doesn't seem to get rattled. And she's done a dynamite job. She's had a lot of good help, but she's the one driving the truck, and so she's done a hell of a job. And it shows in performance, not only the deliverables to the Commonwealth citizens, but also the prudent financial management that's come with operating that program. So kudos to Wendy and her team, big time. Underperformed on hardest hit. We thought we were going to be able to do some hardest hit activity this year in face of the COVID, but mortgage forbearance was much more put more money in borrowers' hands than hardest hit could, and so the borrowers didn't opt for hardest hit, but they went for the payment moratorium on the forbearance program. And then the 2 lines below, E and F, loan servicing did outperform on a revenue standpoint. We accrued or budgeted some of the loan servicing because of the forbearance. We weren't going to collect servicing fees on a lot of our loans, but we were able to get a pretty good slug over and above that, and so we were a little over $722,000. And then rental production, which is the multifamily programs, they were hitting on all cylinders again this year as well. You just saw all those tax projects bond projects that Tracy presented We had a lot of programs, a lot of projects close as well during the year, and the overall income there did exceed the estimate by $750,000. So on the revenue side, we busted budget, which is, I use that as a term, but it's good. We overperformed by just short of $5 million. Line H, which is where we underperformed, if you will, on operating expenses, is on the next chart. But net, the bottom line from a budget standpoint was $3.7 million favorable, and the total budget surplus, or the total actual surplus, just short of $5.7 million. Going on, please.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you. This is the expense side. And you'll see, just again, using some of the alpha aids here, we were over budget on salaries, or negative to budget on salaries and bennies. We've had to hire a few folks. We have to pay our folks, and we ended up spending a little bit more than we had budgeted. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Almost all of that is recoverable through admin fees, primarily again on the HHERF and the other stimulus programs. When Wendy said she had to hire a bunch of people, a lot of those people were temps. Line B, we spent $1.9 million on temps and contract services than we had budgeted. But if you remember the page prior, we made $3.8 million more in overall revenues, 3.3 if you net out the home. So it was prudent spending, obviously, and recoverable almost entirely through admin fees on the stimulus programs. Going down to line C, liquidation shortfall, as I've explained in prior months or prior quarters, we did have more of that than we thought we were going to have. Liquidation shortfall is a function of prepayments of government loans. And so the prepayments were far in excess of what we thought they would be. Liquidation shortfall was higher than we thought it would be. $360,000 of that 515 will come back. And it's just a timing difference of how some of these shortages hit the different bank accounts and the pool, the Ginnie Mae pools that we have. But 360 of that 515 will come back, leaving about 155 real bust, if you will, budget versus actual, which is in line with the increase in prepayments that we thought we'd have. The D dot lines, those were put in the budget last year. We didn't really think COVID was going to be such a big deal, and when we did the budget, COVID was a big deal when we got to the actuals. And so you can see that, foreclosure costs, we didn't foreclose on anybody, so our costs were down. We didn't travel anywhere, so our travel expenses were down. We had very little employee development because nobody could go and get the development. Training for clients and partners, we didn't do a whole lot of that because there was no face-to-face, no networking. And these are the expenses that where that type of activity takes place. We did as much as we could virtually, and so we don't think we have lacked necessarily training, but we have lacked a lot of face-to-face and networking that it continued for too long a period of time will take its toll. But hopefully we'll get this D variant or Delta variant behind us, and we can do a little more traveling, a little bit more networking, and a little more face-to-face, so that we're not missing out on best efforts or best activities and training and the kind of thing that this type of activity gets us. Line E, legal fees, a huge under budget on that. The legal fees were budgeted high because we thought we were going to do hardest hit to a much higher extent. We didn't do hardest hit hardly at all. Therefore, we didn't incur the legal fees. And so that, again, is consistent with the story of overall these expenses performing the way we'd expected to, given the circumstances that we faced during the year. Overall, unfavorable to budget of $1,281,000. Scroll that up just a tad, Jeremy. There you go. That's a negative variance, but we were positive by 4.8 on the, excuse me, 4.9 on the revenue side. And so net again, 3.7 favorable to the overall on the surplus side. So again, a busy year, but one that we came through with delivering the mission and also making a little money while we were doing it. And again, the money we make I've used the word profit in the past, and, we're a housing agency, and is profit really good? Profit's good if you know what you're doing with it and where you're deploying it. And we've taken a lot of the profit over the past several years in anticipation of getting the budget, or the pension issue behind us. But now that we know how to make money, that money should fall through to the bottom line, become increased capital for the mission of the organization, which is really why we're here. Shifting gears just a little bit from the actual financial performance to just some statistical information. The blue line, let me go with the red line. The red line is our delinquency ratio. How many loans are delinquent versus how many loans we have. And if you look at, and this is a July 31, 2021 endpoint, we had 1,766 delinquent loans out of a total of 27,509 loans. That's a ratio of 6.42%. The low point of that is May of 19. The comparable numbers were we only had 902 all delinquent loans instead of the 1,766 we have now, and the ratio was 3.19%. Now the blue line is how many payments we're missing, not how many loans are missing a payment, one or more payments. And so you can see what has happened in mortgage loan forbearance. We're not getting payments on we have multiple loans that are behind 10 to 15 payments. And so this tells you how much cash are we leaving on the table, because embedded in all those payments was cash. And so we are at 59.46% of our loans. So we are missing 16,000 payments on a portfolio of only 27,000 loans. And that's a missed payment ratio of 59%. Our average principal and interest and tax and insurance payment is $829 per loan. That means on those 16,000 payments is $13.5 million of cash that we are not getting, that we anticipated getting before that line took off the way it has. And so those of you who were on the board at the special meeting in March of last year, we increased the line of credit that we had at our banks in anticipation of missing this cash and needing it. And so we haven't really been pushed on it, but you can see that the forbearance has cost a lot of cash flows to not hit our bank accounts. So again, looking a little bit more at COVID forbearance on the next chart, the starred lines shows how many loans are 90 or more days delinquent due to borrowers telling us that they have been adversely impacted by COVID. And so that's $95 million of principal, 809 loans that were current when they declared their impact from COVID. There's an additional $18 million of loans, or 166 that were delinquent at the time that they claimed to have been negatively impacted by COVID. And so we still have a pile of loans that are in forbearance. They're starting to, the forbearance is expiring on a lot of these loans. And so, the next thing is for us is to resolve now all these delinquencies, bringing the loans current. The forbearance end games of the FHAs and VAs out there have specific ways of bringing those loans current. The expectation, however, is that the borrowers will be able to at least make their monthly payment. They won't be able to make up the arrearage, but they will at least be able to start resuming making a monthly payment. And HUD and VA and RHS will bring the loans current so that they're basically getting a fresh start with current conditions. There are a handful of people still adversely impacted. They will not be able to make their payments. There are countless additional forbearance plans that are available, loan modification, and then a program that you're going to hear about from Jamie Rice in a few minutes, the Homeowners Assistance Fund, which will look and act very much like the hardest hit and unemployment bridge programs that we ran during the Great Recession. So there's still a boatload of loans that are in forbearance, and a lot of those forbearance agreements are going to sunset at the end of September and the end of October. So there'll be a lot of modifications and a lot of activity going on. We have already had 227 borrowers since we started recording the COVID and forbearance. We've had 227 borrowers who have come to us and said, I can now make one monthly payment. How can we cure the arrearages? And so we've collected $1.8 million from HUD as HUD has made those loans, brought the loans current, and then the borrowers now are maintaining the currency. So that's not a great performance. 227 out of the 1,100 or so loans that those loans are not in these current statistics because they are now performing loans and no longer in COVID forbearance. But the rubber is going to hit the road in the next several months as these forbearance programs sunset. And I'm optimistic. We historically have X number of loans go into foreclosure every month. We haven't had any go into foreclosure in the last 15 or 16 months. I don't look for them, but they happen. There are going to be a certain percentage of these folks that will not be able to make payments, and we're doing everything we can. And there's myriad programs out there to help these folks continue just a little bit longer. But at some point, the reality is that there's going to be folks that are going to have to lose their homes, and we try to, it's the nature of the beast, and that happens. And so we're doing everything we can to minimize that, and I think we will at least get back to the type of performance we had before COVID, which was pretty good performance. We didn't have a whole lot of people going through the foreclosure process back in the day. So anyway, that's where we are on the COVID forbearance. Again, a pile of loans, but they will sunset their way out and hopefully into performing loans, which is what we all want. I think that exhausts this topic, Mr. Chairman. If there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Holly, I'm back, so thank you for helping me out. Jim, just let me ask you a question. Can you still do mortgage modifications and forbearance under the rules? The reason I ask, I know the banking regulators will no longer allow a forbearance or modification unless you classify the loan as a TDR, troubled debt restructuring. And I just wondered if you all could still continue to do that. I mean, let's face it, this COVID thing is worse now than it was a year ago. So can you, I've had a couple of people ask me in the last couple of weeks if they could do a modification on their loan. And like I said, we're not allowed to right now. Are you allowed to?
Yeah, we don't have the same, we're not regulated as a financial institution like you are, Mike. And so we follow the insurers, primarily FHA, and FHA says, here's the whole menu of different things you can do to help these borrowers out. Are they technically TDRs? Probably, but the strict adherence, not adherence, but the strict reporting and the upshot of the TDR issue for the financial institutions and their regulators is different than it is for us.
Okay, and I missed your presentation on assets, and it looks like your assets have gone down. Is that because of your assets have gone down, but your equity's gone up and your income's gone up, which looks good to Old Country Banker? But have your assets gone down because you sold a bunch of loans? Is that what's happened here?
No, and I did explain a little bit of that. We are subject to a new GASB, Governmental Accounting Standard Board pronouncement that has required us to offload our single-family borrowers' escrow balances and our multifamily replacement reserve balances as more like fiduciary funds as opposed to corporation-owned funds with a corresponding liability. And so we've offloaded $62 million of that cash and liabilities. And you'll see that if you look at the other liabilities line, it's dropped because that's where the contra side of those accounts were. And on the asset side, not so much because we've created so much cash this year that the impact's not as obvious. But as I did say earlier, Mike, the indenture continues to shrink, not monstrously because it's not that big to show a big monstrous reduction, but it also has caused a decrease in assets and decrease in liabilities because we're paying bonds off and loans in the indenture are paying off.
Okay. And this is Kathy, because we do hope that since they're insured loans, we'll get some relief. But I want to remind people that 81,000 households, not people, households in Kentucky are behind in their rent. So I'm just saying, I realize how far that people are behind in their mortgage, and I advocate for relief, but 81,000 households in Kentucky can't pay their rent.
Well, and that's scary, Kathy, in and of itself. But this COVID, not being able to put this COVID situation behind us is even more scary to me. I worry about what the next 2 or 3 months hold here, because I'm beginning to see, some issues. So anyway, Jim, let me ask you, you all are not foreclosing unless it's an empty property, right? Is that still the policy of the KHC?
That's the requirement that's in the public domain. We can't foreclose, but that is going to be relaxed, I believe, at the end of August, where we will be able to foreclose. I've got that here someplace.
But if the property's empty, you can still foreclose.
Well, we can foreclose on an empty property at pretty much any time, but we will be able to foreclose on occupied properties, I believe, starting September 1st. We don't have any intention of doing that. CFPB basically puts a number of requirements on lenders before they can just willy-nilly start foreclosing on people. And so we have to jump through a lot of hoops. The Homeowners Assistance Fund is hopefully going to alleviate some of the pressure there. The modifications that HUD will put in place or has in place will ameliorate a lot of that as well. And so it's really our plan obviously is to keep it to a minimum. And we do have rules on the other side, though, for FHA to honor their insurance, that we have to actually perform the servicing and do something with loans that do not make payments. Otherwise, it crumbs up the reimbursement we get from HUD. And so we're in between a rock and a hard place on some of it. But I'm optimistic that most of these loans will resolve themselves with not a running rate of foreclosure greater than we had before. And nobody wins on a foreclosure except the attorneys. No offense, guys and ladies, but everybody loses except for them. And so we try to keep from padding their pockets too much.
Well, if it's any consolation, our modifications and our forbearance loans are all up to date and paying perfectly. So I think those people want to pay. It's just the circumstances.
Mike, we've noticed that 75%, 80% of those folks that claim COVID issues were paying like clockwork prior to that for years. I mean, these are not the borrowers that are not making their payments or doing this or doing that. These are people that had stellar payment histories on their mortgage, and they got laid off, and they didn't have the money to make the payment. And so we have noticed that statistic. I have not studied it, but it was something that showed up on a lot of these. And so they want to make their payments. They want to live in their homes. They want to be there. So
that's exactly right. I would say it in our case, it's 80 to 9% true. You're right. So any other members of the board have any questions of Jim or comments? Okay, Jeremy, I don't think we have to take action on this, do we?
No, sir, it's information.
Okay. All right, so Jim, you've got a revision to the secondary market purchase program?
Yes. The last time the secondary market mortgage program policy was updated was on April 25th of 2019. In that policy, there are specific positions identified as being able to trade mandatory trades, which obligates the company to actually perform something. It's akin to a futures transaction, which we have left the designation of folks who are able to make those trades at the board level in the policy. As you heard Winston say, Tracy Thurston has taken the second highest position in the finance department, and her position was not named in the policy when it was updated on April 25th of 2019. And so this amendment to the policy is simply to add to the persons who are eligible to make mandatory trades the position of Senior Director Financial Management, which is the position that Tracy Thurston occupies. And so that's the extent of the recommendation here.
Any members have any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve this change.
So moved.
All right, Kathy, I have a second.
Second, Susan.
All right, thank you, Susan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, so Jim, you want to talk about the sale of the 2021 housing revenue bonds?
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is something new for the board for a while. We haven't issued a new bond or new refunding bonds or new money bonds in over 5 years, but we have some bonds that are eligible to be refunded or refinanced under the rules. And those bonds have a much higher interest rate than we can refinance them into today. And so if you recall, on February 25th, the board authorized management to develop a financing plan to consider economically refunding a number of different bond issues totaling about $115 million. We've analyzed the bonds that we've got and determined that it's advantageous to only refund the Series 2009 C4s, which are NIBP bonds that we got from the Treasury Department, and Series 12A taxable bonds that are the bonds that are eligible for refunding. And so we are recommending that we do a refunding transaction in an amount not to exceed $60 million with a net present value of savings of 3%. That figure, that 3% is if that number is negative, you're worse off refunding than if you keep the bonds you have. And the initial analysis says that the present value advance should be about a little over 6%. The resolution that is being approved today, that we were requesting approval of today, is what's known as a parameter resolution. That in that resolution, it establishes certain guardrails or parameters that the final sales transaction must at least accomplish. Otherwise, management does not have the authority to close the deal. And so the board is putting constraints on management not to go renegade and make sure that we have a good sale of bonds. And so the parameters that are in this resolution is that the 2021 bonds cannot exceed $60 million. They're currently scheduled at 58.9, and we're not adding any bonds, so it can't get above 60 million. But we have the authority to refund up to $60 million in bonds. The structure that we are settling on is a mix between a fixed rate serial bonds and adjustable rate bonds, about 23 million of the fixed rate and about 35 million of variable rate bonds. And so the parameters in here also say that the fixed rate bonds cannot have an interest rate greater than 3.5%. The current bonds are at 4.5%. The weighted average of it's a little less than 4.5 because the NIBP bonds are in there. Then the adjustable rate loans cannot have a lifetime max of in excess of 15%. And it's hard to put, interest rates have gotten higher than 15%, but the bond indenture, the bond resolution itself, or the price of the actual update to the resolution will not allow these bonds to be available. They can't go higher than 15%. Right now, the rates on these bonds, on the adjustables, are going to be about 12 basis points. And so, yes, there's a lot of rhetoric in the market about rates going up. We've seen in my career, rates go up very quickly. We do have the financial wherewithal that if the rates on these variable bonds go up too quickly, too much too quickly, we'll just pay them off because we have the resources in the indenture to just pay the bonds off. And so we're going to take advantage of the low rates there now and not be forced to ride up with the higher rates if they were to eventually happen. So the adjustable rate loans cannot exceed 15%. The present value savings on the deal cannot be lower than 3%. So it has to be at least that profitable to go through with the transaction. As I said, I think the basic number is about 6% or thereabouts. What it does is gives us some wiggle room. We're not going to close these bonds until October, and it gives us wiggle room that we don't have to come back to the board or the executive committee at pricing and say, The board today is telling us it ain't going to work if it doesn't meet these parameters. And so that gives management the authority to go ahead and execute all the purchase transactions so long as all these particular parameters are met. Just real quickly, the bonds cannot issue at a discount greater than 3%, nor at a premium greater than 15%. That's a pretty wide range. We're not trying to create, there's no PAC bonds in here where we're going to be trying to create some, get some premium and that kind of thing. So that's a fairly straightforward parameter. And then it also allows us to provide our own self-liquidity. We have the financial resources to provide self-liquidity. It's a rated arrangement. S&P and Moody's rate the arrangement, whereby we use the value and the capital that's in the indenture to provide the financial strength to refinance or to make sure that the bonds can be resold, and if not, then the indenture will buy it itself. And for those of you who were here at March of last year, we did have some variable rate bonds that we were in danger of not being able to remarket because of the COVID hit the fan one day in late March, and there is still existing standing authorization that the executive director or the chief financial officer can pay off any of the variable rate bonds in the event that the market seizes up and we're not able to resell our bonds, which happens every week. And so anyway, this resolution also allows for the self-liquidity that programs that we have in existence can also be used to provide self-liquidity on the adjustable rate piece of these bonds. Management recommends approval of the parameter resolution so that we can get this savings on the books starting sometime in October.
Any members have any questions of Jim regarding this approval? Okay, I'll entertain a motion that we approve this. Someone, please. Kathy? And do I have a second?
Yes,
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Jim, just let me say thanks for all that you do for the organization, and you do a tremendous job with the finances here, and I learn something every month. So from you, so I really appreciate the good job you do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most days it's fun.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Jeremy, you've got an update for the signatory authority.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In order for KHC to carry on its day-to-day business, we maintain a resolution by the board that authorizes certain individuals of the corporation to sign documents and carry out that business. And in general, that is the executive team. As discussed earlier, Amy Smith has retired effective July 30th, and John Davidson has assumed that position. And as a result, we need to have that signatory authority updated to remove Amy Smith as being an authorized signer for the corporation and to add John Davidson. So staff does recommend adoption of this resolution.
Any members have any questions or comments for Jeremy? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve this.
Phil Moffitt makes the motion.
Thank you, Phil. Second.
Susan.
Thank you, Susan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay. I'm going to make this next one short and sweet. This is the executive committee meeting, and Thursday, June 17th, 2021. We basically approved personal service contracts that had to be approved for Wendy so that she could move on with some of her programs. She didn't have the luxury of waiting a couple of months until the board met. So we approved these personal service contracts. I'll be glad to entertain any questions that anybody has and yield to Wendy to answer. So anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you. Wendy, you have another personal service contract you need to talk about?
I do. Thank you, Chair Denham. And this will flow into a brief update for you all on our Healthy at Home Eviction Relief Program. But we, through an RFP process back in May, which you all feels like 10 years ago to me, we engaged a number of prospective contractors, two of which Chair Denham mentioned before. Those contracts have been approved. And we then decided to one that scored well enough and was available to help us process eviction relief applications, just to add on to our capacity to process alongside our existing folks. And so we engaged with them. We'd already done a procurement to engage them and then did an emergency determination for this specific scope of work. And that's KPMG LLP. So again, they were procured, and then we did the emergency determination for this more specific scope of work than was in the bigger RFP. And they actually began processing files last week, processing applications. We have trained them. And again, they are just working alongside us. We don't want to give up our capacity, but we want to get over our backlog. And Jeremy, it might make sense to go into the slides about HHERF before I ask the board to entertain the motion. That's great. Thank you. So just to give you all a very brief update on where we stand with this COVID-19 rent relief program, which we call Healthy at Home Eviction Relief. Now, Treasury calls it Emergency Rental Assistance, and this is 1.0, the first bucket of funding that has come from Treasury. And just to give you all just a reminder about the program, we work in 118 counties, although we partner with Louisville and Lexington, and we meet with them every other week. We met every week in January and February, but now we're every other, so we can coordinate. And our programs are virtually identical, in terms of the profile of benefits that come to the tenant. Even some of the documents are identical across all three. So we operate in 118 counties. The tenants at this point have to have arrears to be eligible for our program, and that's arrears in rent and or utilities. And they need to be at or under 80% of area median income, which is a lot higher than most of our assistance programs. And they have to self-attest to some kind of economic impact during the pandemic. And there's a range of ways that tenants can meet that. We are doing lump sum direct deposits to landlords and lump sum direct payments to utilities, not always direct deposit to the utilities. Some of them require a paper check. We are also, in some cases, paying tenants directly when the landlord refuses to participate. But the lion's share of the dollars are going to rent that are being direct deposited to landlords. We will calculate our assistance back to April of 2020, and we will basically allow the most that the federal program will allow. So we will cover 100% of arrears for up to 12 months of contract rent. And for everyone, whether you get 1 month of arrears or 12 months of arrears, you get 3 months of future rent. So there's a total max of 15 months of assistance. And it's the same for utilities. We'll cover up to 12 months of arrears for utilities and 3 months of future utilities. The reason we do that maximum of 3 months, which is the most we're allowed, is so that folks have some stability, and to be frank, so that they don't have to reapply to us every single month because we can't handle the volume and they don't need to be doing that paperwork. We are beginning to see a handful of reapplications at this point. They just go back to the end of the queue because we still have a little bit of a backlog. Next slide, Jeremy. This is just the website. I just want to remind you all what it was. You can keep going, Jeremy. So in terms of the grants that have come to Kentucky, there are 2 tranches of emergency rental assistance. There's 1 and there's 2. We have 1 in hand, and that's what we're using. ERA 2 is coming, but we have not begun using those funds. We're still kind of working on an allocation plan to share with the governor's office. So there are 3 direct grantees in Kentucky: Jefferson County, Louisville, Fayette County, Lexington, and then we are the balance of state. And these dollars actually go to the finance cabinet and then come to KHC through an MOA. Of this first bucket of money, this first tranche under ERA 1, we got $264 million. The formula Treasury uses really doesn't fully fund Louisville and Lexington relative to their share of the population. So we have already sub-granted $27 million to Louisville and $11.7 million to Lexington. And our proposal for the ERA2 would be to do the same commensurate share of sub-grants out of that money. That's on top of their direct grants. So you have to add the two together to see all of it. So it's a lot of funds. Let's just say that. So in terms of, here's where we are. We launched February 15th. We began taking applications. The dollars came from Treasury in mid-January, and we launched February 15th. We were one of 6 states to launch that early. We have paid out a total of $44.6 million since we started making payments in March. $39.5 million is rent assistance, $5.4 million is utility assistance. We've received almost 15,000 complete-ish applications. That's a very hard to nail down target. They come to us in a state that's called ready for review. It doesn't mean they're complete. We often have to chase down landlords and tenants to get us some more things to get them complete. The average new applications that we have been getting over the last 6 weeks is 409 new apps per week. And we have made 12,171 individual payments on behalf of over 8,400 households. Because some of them have rent and multiple utilities, we may be making several individual payments. A payment to the water company, a payment to the electric company, a payment to the landlord. And let me tell you, the utilities represent a lot of human hours for every dollar, more human hours for every dollar in utilities paid versus rent. It just takes a lot more time. The average assistance per household is running at $5,277. I can tell you some folks get a lot more, some a lot less. Some landlords have received tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars from us when you add up all of their tenants. So it's a significant amount of assistance to landlords largely, but utilities are also receiving a lot when you add it all up. So when you look at what we did in the fall with some flexible coronavirus relief funds plus these dollars, so far we have gotten over $59 million out to over 12,500 households. We're really proud of that. We do still have a backlog though. And Jeremy, if you'll go to the next slide, I think that gives you a sense of where we are with the grant. So again, we have $264 million in ERA1. We have subgranted that $38.7 million to Louisville and Lexington. We've paid out $44.6 million. We have used $3.4 million for admin. That's us as well as a state agency that's supporting our application system and file processing system. So that, when you add it up, is $86.7 million that has been committed, obligated, spent, however you want to call it. That's 33% of the grant since March. To me, that is a minor bureaucratic miracle. But now we're not taking a lot of heat locally or in the state, but the program at the national level is. My trouble with that is they're taking as the denominator that overall grant of $264 million and how much have we spent. And I have no idea if we need $264 million. We're going to do our darndest to use as much of it as we can, but that was allocated based on population, not based on eviction data or renter poverty or anything like that. It was really just a quick way for Congress to get the dollars out. So what I am using as my metric is how long does it take us to get a complete application paid? I will say at this point, we do not expect to run out of funds for this. We expect to be able to help every complete application that comes in from an eligible tenant. Next slide, Jeremy. So here's our rate of getting payments out the door. It did stumble a little, like we ramped up and then we fell back a little bit in May. June was good. You can see in July, we made a giant leap. There are 2 reasons for that. One is we actually had 1 extra payment in July, just the way the dates fell. So I don't want to impress you all too much. One of those weeks probably belongs in June, really. So June would look better. But also July really represents when we stripped out a number of paperwork requirements based on some new guidance from Treasury, where they allowed us to use self-attestation from tenants more than we had been, and you can see that showing in the numbers. So we are really moving in the right direction, and with KPMG, this vendor coming alongside us, we expect to be over our backlog in 3 to 4 weeks and processing in real time. So Jeremy, if you go to the next slide, that might be on that slide. Yeah. So we brought on KPMG, and we're just paying them a fee per fully processed file. And we have a definition in the contract of what we consider fully processed. And we have them on contract to do up to 5,500 applications for a not to exceed amount of $1.8 million. So we are only paying them for files they get complete. We're doing QC on them and extra to make sure they're doing it right. We have trained them, and we do 3 meetings a week with them right now until they're at the point where we feel like they're doing everything right and they understand the nuances of this. But with their help and our extra productivity, we really do think in 3 to 4 weeks we will be through. Our backlog as of last Friday was 1,200 applications. So we think we can knock that out in 3 to 4 weeks. And my aim is by early October, when the moratorium ends, that if you get us a complete application, we are paying you in no more than 2 weeks. We only pay on Fridays, so I just can't guarantee it would be a 1 week turnaround depending on when that app gets completed. Anyway, that is our big audacious goal with this, is to get to that point so that when the moratorium ends, we are processing in 2 weeks, and then that we would do this potentially for many years because we have sufficient funding. The only other thing I would add for you all is that the Administrative Office of the Courts has begun partnering with us in a really meaningful way. They are sharing data that we have integrated into our application system so that we can flag and prioritize folks who actually have a forcible detainer docket number. That they are really moving toward eviction so that we can fast track them and collapse the documentation required because we have the court data. They're doing some other things with us, but I'll save that for another presentation. We're excited about that partnership. And I think that's all my slides.
My goodness, Wendy, this is a miracle, and thank you.
Wendy, this is Susan. How can we help you get this out there? We're happy to use whatever platforms we have to continue to push. We obviously are very concerned that with the uptick in the Delta variant and COVID that we're going to have more people struggling again. So we will do what we can. We can talk offline. We'll do what we can to help.
Yeah, and Molly Tate, who's our comms director, would be happy to get you whatever, any kind of boilerplate language or flyers, Spanish language documents, any of that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
So with that, I would ask the board to consider approving this contract with KPMG that we have entered into to get over our backlog with AJGRF.
Any board members have any further questions or comments for Wendy? Wendy, just let me ask you, and maybe Jim can answer this. This $1,842,000. Actually, we will get that back.
Oh yeah, it's fully paid for by the grant. I'm sorry. Yes, I should have added that. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll entertain a motion that we approve this.
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion and a second.
Evil second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you.
And you are right. This is a modern day miracle. Thank you for all the work, and please thank your staff. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Winston, it's your turn.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I have 4 items of informational. There's 3 short ones and one is a little bit more extended. Let me do the short ones first. First of all, I'd like to thank the board members that were able to make it to the Kentucky Housing Corporation picnic on July the 1st. Despite the weather, which the rain did not cooperate, and so the outdoor picnic pretty much moved to an indoor picnic. It was, I believe, a very successful event, and we sure do appreciate the support that the board members that were able to attend gave us in that. I know some of you wanted to be there and couldn't be there, and but the ones who were, Kathy Henko, Secretary Holly Johnson, Susan Reber, Steve Brunson, Gail Lively, and Mayor Beverly Chester Burton. If I left anybody out, speak up, or I apologize at least for leaving you out. But thank you very much for being there. Our staff appreciates it. They really do. Upcoming, we have a board finance committee meeting scheduled for Thursday, September the 23rd, which will be coming up. We anticipate at this point in time, given the current circumstances, that will likely be virtual, but that I guess is subject to possible change, but unlikely. The next board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October the 28th. We had sort of decided prematurely that would be an in-person meeting, and we were planning a reception following that, an in-person reception to honor the retirees that have left the company and retired from the company during this past year, including Amy Smith. But we are still reevaluating what the conditions will be on October the 28th. So that could possibly be converted to a virtual meeting, and we'll keep you all posted by emails and other notices as to what we are going to be doing, whether it's in person or virtual. The last item that I have is to turn the program over for a few minutes to Jamie Rice, who's the head of our single-family lending program, who has undertaken the awesome responsibility of dealing with the Homeowners Assistance Program. And you all have heard a lot over the last several months about our rental assistance program, which Wendy has just been through in summarizing where we are there. But there's a companion program that was enacted by the Congress dealing with essentially mortgage assistance for homeowners that have gotten behind in mortgage payments as a result of the pandemic. And Jamie is heading our group here, who has put together our program. Each state and many cities have been called upon to develop programs pursuant to Treasury guidelines so that they can begin to make assistance in this area. And the Treasury just recently came out with the guidelines, which were essential for us to get started. And within a matter of a couple of weeks, Jamie and our team turned around and have filed our program with the Treasury, our proposed program with the Treasury, and we're waiting final approval of that. But with all that said, Jamie, if you will be kind enough to give an overview to the board of the Homeowners Assistance Program.
Certainly. Thank you, Winston, and thank you, members of the board. First test will be to share my screen. Jeremy, may I please share mine? That's the first test, right? Thanks, Jeremy. Let's try one more time now. Well, it says I'm disabled. Well, no fancy visual aids for you. Oh, wait, here we go. Sorry, guys.
I'm involved. That's the reason it won't work.
Oh, no. Hopefully you can see my screen here for the Homeowner Assistance Fund program.
We can.
Great. So let me start by saying we've been here before. I want to start with just a little background because Kentucky Housing Corporation has been on the front lines assisting distressed homeowners once before. In 2008, August of 2008, Kentucky's Homeownership Production Center was created and through legislatively and announced by Governor Steve Beshear at the time. And what the Homeownership Protection Center does is it's a centralized resource for distressed Kentucky homeowners where they can connect with housing counseling agencies, legal aid. They can also get information about maneuvering the mortgage default process. So that has been in place since 2008, now 13 years. In 2010, during the Great Recession, Kentucky was one of 19 states, including Washington, D.C., who were named a hardest hit state. And that was designation meant that we were a state with higher than average unemployment rates and higher than average foreclosure rates during the Great Recession. So that designation earned us about $207 million that we used to assist over 10,000 Kentucky homeowners since January of 2011. You've heard Jim and Wendy both talk about the Unemployment Bridge Program. What that program did is it provided direct mortgage assistance and or reinstatement to participating servicers on behalf of distressed homeowners. We have an established network of nearly 400 participating servicers. Those are national servicers and your state banks as well. Homeowners who accessed our program worked directly with our network of housing counseling agencies to get these funds through the Protection Center. And I like to compare then and now, Great Recession versus the Great Pandemic, we'll call it. During the Great Recession, Kentucky's unemployment rate exceeded 10% for an extended period of March of 2009 through December of 2010. Property values plummeted and credit standards increased sharply, meaning that it was harder to get a loan. And if you were able to get a loan, you owed more on your home than you could get the loan for. Or if you were trying to sell your home, you could not sell your home for enough to cover what you owed on it. There were not many loss mitigation options during that time, particularly if you were unemployed. So a lot of people had the only option of either walking away from their home, doing some sort of short sale, or they were foreclosed upon. Versus now, the coronavirus pandemic, Kentucky's unemployment rate was 4.2% in March of 2020. It jumped drastically to 16.9% in April, bounced a little bit back at 10.9% in May, back down to 5.7% of June of 2020. Compared to June of 2021, it stands at 4.4%. In terms of the housing market, we have been in a boom. It defies logic, but we have dealt with a subsequent or simultaneous purchase boom and a refinance boom, which lenders will tell you never happen at the same time. You're usually busy with one or the other, and they've been very busy with both for the last year and a half. And the other difference between then and now is back in March of 2020, when the very first sign that the pandemic was going to start really impacting the economy, you saw HUD, VA, USDA, Fannie, Freddie, you saw the CARES Act, CFPB, just all of these agencies just swooped right into the housing market and threw in special forbearance plans, advanced loan modification plans, eviction and foreclosure moratoriums. So you really saw everybody just pile on early on in order to prevent another housing crash. So Jim's touched on this a little bit. Wendy's touched on this a little bit. And even I think Kathy left the meeting, but she even, I think, stressed the renters. I think really what the numbers suggest is the renters, there are no such protections for the renters. I don't want to make light of what the homeowners are dealing with. The need is definitely there, but there are just so many more resources now that did not exist 10 years ago. So that has given us the time that we've needed to build a meaningful program. So one of the resources that have come out of the coronavirus pandemic is the Homeowner Assistance Fund program of 2021. The purpose of this program is to prevent homeowner mortgage delinquencies, defaults, foreclosures, loss of utilities or home energy services, and displacements of homeowners experiencing financial hardship due to the pandemic. Different now versus then. Back then, there were only 19 states and DC who received this money. Now every state plus several territories have received, and tribal communities have received funding of some sort out of this pool of money. Kentucky's allocation is $85.4 million. And this program duration is September 30th of 2025. So the structure of Kentucky's program, we are going to structure our program up front to be a maximum assistance per household of $35,000. And just if you do the rough math, that's about 2,075 homeowners that we can assist. That may seem like a higher dollar amount to come out of the gate with. During all of the time that we offer the Unemployment Bridge program, when the unemployment rates were just crazy, the highest assistance we ever increased our program to was $30,000. And that was just for a short period of time. And we went $35,000 for this program for a few reasons. Number one, there are more potential uses of funding this time around that did not exist with the Hardest Hit program. And number two, we know, basically, Jim touched on it earlier, how many households have been in a forbearance plan for the last 18 months. And they may see that to its end through HUD or through a partial claim, or they may opt for this program to bring that mortgage current, depending on where they are in that timeline. So, and we also thought that starting high, we can always go lower. Once we see what the average use is per household, we can lower it a lot easier than starting low and then needing to increase it down the road. So the eligible uses for these funds, we can, once again, we're going to do mortgage assistance reinstatement. We've done it over 10,000 times. We know how to work that train. What's new this time around is we are going, which is great news for us, we will be able to assist past due property taxes that are not part of an escrow. If taxes and insurance were part of escrow payments, we cover it in the mortgage assistance. But if it's not escrowed, we could not serve that need under the Hardest Hit program. We will be able to serve that need under this new program. So past due non-escrowed taxes and insurance, past due homeowners association dues, which is completely new, and non-escrowed taxes and homeowners insurance, non-escrowed taxes and homeowners association dues can force foreclosure. So we're really happy to see that those are eligible uses under this new program. And we also have added past due utility assistance in our program as well. So some of the qualifiers for this new program, the homeowners have to have a qualifying hardship on or after January 21st of 2020. That's written into the law. And the definition of that qualifying hardship is they have either had a material decrease in income or increase in expenses. There are income limits with this new program. We can go up to 150% area median income. Of course, the property has to be their primary residence and it has to be in the state of Kentucky. If they're over the border, the neighbor state has money too. We will pay directly to the payee, meaning that participating servicer, the tax or insurance entities, the money does not go to the homeowner. We pay that third party. And we are structuring our program as a grant with a 2-year deed restriction. And we do that for 2 reasons. Number one, we know based on our previous 10 years working with Treasury that we've been required to report homeowner retention for 2 years after assistance is received. And the best way to track homeowner retention is to put some sort of filing on that property so that if they sell their home, if they refinance their home, or if they're even foreclosed upon, we would show up in a title search and then we would be notified of what was going on. The second reason we do it with the deed restriction is should there be any instance of fraud, we do have some recourse to try to retain some of that money back. The application process, homeowners will apply through an online mobile-friendly application portal. This is under construction now. We did not have this with the Hardest Hit program. It was a very heavily papered process. It worked, but it was not efficient. So we are adding that efficiency this time around. Homeowners will work directly, once again, with our housing counseling agencies. The benefit of that is crucial. They act as our processors, but they also can connect the homeowners to other resources in their areas. And should the homeowner not qualify or should they need some other sort of financial counseling, they're already working with the experts. And so they will be in the best hands there. And then we're going to continue to work within our Protection Center system for those back-end functions. The Protection Center is already set up to process payments, handle the reporting that we need to do with Treasury, and it's been vetted for 10 years. So we did not want to rebuild that system. Now, the current status of the program, I have to give Wendy a shout out, and Molly. Wendy shared a great graphic that North Carolina Housing had on their website. She shared it yesterday and said, wouldn't this be cool? And we said, yes, this would be very cool. We gave it to Molly, and Molly very quickly developed this morning. So Winston, Jim, no one has seen it, and no one outside of Molly, myself, and Melinda. So this is new. But we're going to add a status bar on our Homeowner Assistance Fund landing page to show exactly where we are in the process. So we've completed our research. We've developed our plan. Treasury opened up the application portal 3 weeks ago, and we had a deadline of August 20th to submit it. We submitted that to Treasury on August 19th, so we had a whole day early. And then what we're waiting on right now is any suggestions from Treasury, if they like our plan, if they want us to make any changes. That's the step that we're waiting on. And then step 4 is where we are going to launch our pilot program. We're working on building everything based on how we've submitted it to Treasury. Should they change anything, we'll come back and make those adjustments accordingly. But our timing of our launch, we are targeting October 1st to launch our pilot program very quietly, we hope, just so we can run some borrowers through the process and make sure everything is running smoothly. We are going to target our pipeline of distressed mortgagors. We have a list of them. We know exactly who they are. We can reach out to them first. And like I said, just smooth out any rough parts in the process. And then the goal would be to launch the statewide program 4 to 6 weeks after that. That will kick off with an announcement from the governor's office. So I tried to be quick because I know we're coming up on 4 o'clock. So any questions with that?
I mean, just let me say it's an excellent program and one that is desperately needed out here. And certainly we really appreciate you all putting that together. So any members of the board have any questions of Jamie? Jamie, I do have some time. You don't have to do it today, but sometime you and I need to talk. I need to know a little bit more about that deed restriction you got in there.
Okay.
I don't know much about how to do that. All right.
Okay. I'm learning too, so we'll learn together.
All right.
Jamie, thank you very, very much for that presentation. I know Jamie and her team has been working to get this ready for us for several months, and we would have been ready a lot quicker if Treasury had been out there with their regulations so that we could fit our program into their regulations. But we're ready now, and thank you. And Mike, that's all I have today.
Well, thank you, Winston. And I want to thank the members of the board for attending. And I just want to say, you know, I am always amazed at the ability and the professionalism of the KHC staff. I mean, we really can really be proud of what KHC does in this state. And I just want you to express to all the staff, Winston, how much we appreciate it, how much the board appreciates them. So thank you. I mean,
we will do that.
You are performing, as Wendy said earlier, performing everyday miracles every day. So thank you all so very much. And I just want to give a shout out to the management team. I mean, you know, in my discussions with Winston and Jeremy and Jim, I learned so much. And so I appreciate all the work you all do. So if there are no other members that have any questions or comments, anybody have anything you want to bring up today? Okay, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.